We're on?
File it up. I have April stuff here. Oh, this is. Yes, it's over there. This way. Thank you. July 18th. So we're in order at time 5:49. Terry. Present are our illustrious Sergeant Spielman. Easy. Commissioner Ramsey is not present. Commissioner Roberts is here for his last subcommittee meeting.
Well, you might have one next week.
That's right. We're gonna slap.
At
One
some
to last.
point, I'm going to stop attending, but
I know that's right.
I'll be at the commission next week.
Sorry.
And myself. So we are in order. Is there any public comment?
Can I reserve for later?
You can reserve for later, or we can certainly. Yeah, we can have public comment at the end. We'll bump it to that. And Terry, you have any problems with the agenda?
No.
So by consensus, it's approved. Moving on to all business.
Okay.
Yeah.
As a
Yeah,
reminder,
please.
I had given you the wrong version of Lexipol 200. So here's
That's right.
the
That we're missing all the pages.
Well, it was it wasn't missing anything. It was a completely revised version that Sergeant Spin provided.
And you were jumped on to 200 right off the bat, right? Last time that we're here, and then we stopped because because we didn't have the full policy.
Right.
Games.
Yeah.
So okay.
But
so
now we have it, but it's, and now we have it. So let's go for it.
let's go for it. But obviously, we always allow Terry to go first. Because
Okay, well, I'll go then. I liked all the shalls in here. There were no shoulds that I could find. Everything was a shall. So, good. I mean, you're on the right track.
oh God.
Okay. I'm on, let's see, 200.7. Looks like page 3. Office of the Chief. Then it says under D, it says providing for staff. I presume that means.
Staffing?
Providing for staffing, yeah. I presume that means hiring people or something.
I don't know. All of this stuff, all of this content, and like his version doesn't have the show the side
It
situation.
should, yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I copied, I guess, the final one. There's too damn much stuff to print.
Yeah. Anyway.
Here's
Here's
one.
All of the content is from our old police regulations.
Terry.
Yeah,
So it's not new language, it's not lexical language, it's
Yeah.
language that's been there for.
well, that doesn't mean it couldn't be changed.
No, it sure doesn't, but
Okay.
if you're asking me what it means, I couldn't tell
You don't know, because that was the same thing
Okay,
it used
Terry,
to be.
here's the version with the comments.
Okay, I
on
can't
it.
digest that right now, because I have to go off of my own notes.
Because right now in HR, what the people use in HR, you do providing for staffing. The words that they use is implements a retention and hiring policy. That's a process. I mean, providing for staffing is what you're talking about. It's hiring and retention, right? Is that, or is it more basic as creates a
that's
schedule?
basically it. This isn't like giving them lunch or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This.
A cup of tea.
Well, anyway, I don't know what you mean, because if it's the old policy, I guess you mean we should just go with it. But I'm just looking at whatever it is, and so that would be one question, just for clarification. On the same one, not I, but let's say on that section, it doesn't say anything about discipline. In C, it says, prescribing penalties for violations of any such policies or procedures and providing for the enforcement of said penalties. That's pretty cryptic. I guess that means disciplinary stuff?
I believe that's what they're alluding to.
So when was 405 first written?
May 1998. It's in your last week's
Yeah.
packet, the regulations.
That's right, because we were discussing it.
Right.
You might want to have the HR department for the city of Berkeley look at that. Look at this. I mean, this is just, I mean.
This is just a structure.
That's right. I mean, just for the new languages that HR uses, because this pretty much, that's an HR process. And if it's an HR process, I mean, is the HR director comfortable with prescribing penalties for violations of any such policies or procedures? Or is she more in line with establishing and setting standards for conduct due to violations of any policies? You know, whether the language has changed in HR. So I mean, this might be internal to the city. I look at a lot of procedural standards and HR things, and this language might be just, but hey, it might say, you know, listen, that's just particular to law enforcement. So it could be it.
And the last one I would suggest, I mean, it's like whatever, is there's nothing on performance. And, you know, to me it should say something like the chief is responsible, office of the chief, and the chief, it says the chief of police, is responsible for the department's performance in accordance with city council directives and community values, or something like that. I mean, that's kind of a big deal. So you could tell this is written like in the 40s or something, when there was no.
Used to be just one paragraph. Too.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But I mean, those, to me, those are three. The staffing, I'm not so worried about. I mean, I guess it's not going to be critical, but the discipline and the performance, it seems to me, would be important. So going on 200.9.2, it says, the first line says identification unit is administered by an identification expert who is responsible, blah, 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 blah. Is that an outside person, or is that a?
No, it's one of our crime scene techs. They're called ID.
Oh, it's a technician, though, internally, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, and they're trained to be experts in identification or something?
Yeah, so they're like CSI, but we call them identification technicians.
Okay. On 200.9.4, the parking manager is not sworn, right?
Correct.
Okay. And on
But the captain, but there is a lieutenant or a captain above that person,
right,
who is overly responsible for that department, right?
right.
Yeah.
And on 210,
So the final supervisor before the chief, it's
is sworn.
It's
Yeah,
sworn.
no, I saw that. I saw there was a chain of command there. 210.3 says that the special response team is administered by employees who are directly responsible to the operations division captain.
Yeah, I had that
Well, why is
question
it
too.
employees?
I think because it could be lieutenants and sergeants and.
We could say officers,
Yeah,
right?
it could.
Because usually when you use members or employees or something, that means it could be sworn or not.
Or sworn personnel.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I had an X on that.
Okay, and 200.10.4 on training. Is this the section that is responsible for tracking all the training, making sure that the training is given?
No.
No?
No, so the field training officer program is just training new officers. Just,
Yeah.
The 4-month training that they have coming in, as far as like mandated training and things like that, that's for personnel and training. They do all the tracking. So
Oh, personnel and
the
training.
recruit comes out of the academy having had all of the required training there, and then they come into field training, and then they have to go
Okay, that's next. So I had that same question on 211.2. So that's where that rests. So it says like E, developing and directing departmental training programs. But as I look down through here, to me, it would be the thing that is most important in kind of looking in from the outside is that people are assigned the appropriate training, people get the appropriate training, and they get it in a timely way, and that it's tracked, and that somebody's responsible and accountable for making sure that happens. And I'm not actually, this is all process. It isn't about delivery. And it's like, well, this group is responsible for ensuring all the training gets done and in a timely way, and blah, blah, blah. So that would be a comment there. Because that is really, to me, where the rubber hits the road with with officer performance, and that is making sure that they get the training they should have. And there's so much stuff out there, is why I'm concerned about it. There's de-escalation, there's, you keep piling on, right, in terms of training.
But the training is tracked because most of it is post-training. It is tracked via the login of that police officer. Yeah. Like I'm just taking ethics training right now, right? So because of ethics training, I log in on my name and my special PIN number, and it literally times the time that I spend there, and it won't let me complete the training until a certain time has lapsed, right? So when a police officer does post training or any training which is computerized, it is logged under that police officer, and that way is categorized. That officer did this training, because it just tracks it, right?
Post tracks that. As far as if we have a computer training through Post, there's a whole training division that makes sure that, for bias-based policing, something like that, if there's a class that we need to take, they make sure that it's set up and that it's that every officer has attended. And they keep track of who needs to have training with firearms, who needs to go to emergency vehicle operations school, who has to have defensive tactics, those things. That's all through personnel and training.
So the question is a training that has to do with something that requires reading and answering questions. That's not tracked within a computerized system, whether it's post or whether it's internal to the department. So how do you know somebody? If it's just not a post regulation, but it's still an internal training thing for the department, apart from the sign-off sheet, or is there a sign-off sheet?
Yeah, there's a sign-in, sign-out sheet for all training. And then, for firearms, we have to qualify.
Sure.
For defensive tactics, we have to show proficiency in all those things. But there's not too much computer testing that we have, unless it's post, and then we log in and we go through these, Q&As and things like
Sure.
that.
And that's logged to the officer's name. So there's a tracking for that.
That's all logged through Post.
Yeah. Because it becomes part of the police officer's permanent
Correct,
record.
yeah.
Sure.
So I'm not sure where that ended up, but say, for example, on a new officer coming in, right? So it seems to me that you end up, a new officer coming in, he needs to get the following training. Mm-hmm. And so it's all listed. Mm-hmm. And there should be some kind of time frame in there, right? Because 3 years from now, it doesn't get it when they're on the street.
Yeah, it's in our FTO manual.
And so that would be there, the time frame. And then somebody would go through and make sure that the box gets checked.
Oh, yes. So
right?
we have a whole field training manual that's this thick,
mm-hmm.
that they have to go through and show that not only have they done all the shooting defensive tactics at the academy, but they have to do ours
mm-hmm.
here at the station. So they have to have that signed off, and then go through the whole book that they carry around for 4 months. And there's things that the field training officer officer signs off
Mhm.
on to make sure that they've been talked to about this,
Okay.
they've been talked to about this, they've been shown this, they know where this is.
And for continuing officers, when they come up on annual training that needs to be done annually or biannually or something, same thing?
Then the personnel in training would put out a departmental order saying all of these people need to go to class on this day because all of these people are due for their training.
Okay, so this group tracks that.
Yeah, personnel in training, yeah.
So just a
Okay.
question. I mean, so once all those signatures are done, and I'm sure that it's like it's I've never seen it, but I'm going to go on my mind how I qualify for submarines as an officer, submarine officer. For me to get my qualifications, it was different. It was 20 pages, and each 20 pages for each single system had to have a signature on it. And at the end of that, there was a board. I had 4 members that were sitting for an hour and asked me questions on the whole pages that I had to sign off for a year. It's is the signature by itself just proof enough that the person has retained that knowledge, and so therefore they're good to go, or is there notes that the field training officer goes, at the end of this period, I think this officer needs to go back to 1, 2, 3, and 4 and do a little more retraining.
Yeah, no, so I was a field training officer for 15 years before I became a sergeant, and so every day in field training when you have a recruit, you have to do a daily evaluation, and it goes through 30 different categories of officer safety, of report writing, of just a bunch of stuff, and you have to grade them on it, and you have to talk about everything that you guys did that day, and what they did the best on, and what they did the poorest on, and then you go over it with your recruit, and they sign off on it, and you sign off on it, and then it goes to the field training sergeants, it goes to the field training lieutenants, so that happens every day. And then at the end of the first phase of the evaluation, the FTO writes a summary about this person's strengths and weaknesses and whether or not they recommend that this person continue to the next phase. And
That
so
makes sense.
that's what happens, and so the book kind of follows along with that. And it's actually phased out within the book. So it's like your phase 1 officer is supposed to go through the phase 1 training, and and then it gets more complex, and then until you get to final phase, and then at the end it's then they're a solo officer, and then they have the performance evaluations every 6 months during their 2-year probationary period. So they're monitored more than a regular officer who then gets off probation and is monitored, has a yearly report. So
Gotcha.
it's difficult to get through.
Yeah, it's the Bar Police Department had 2 officers in training that didn't make it, and then opted themselves to go into the CSO program
Yeah.
because they just didn't make it, and most of it was just they just didn't return the knowledge they had to. So I just wanted,
Yeah,
I mean,
there's
but
a
I'm
lot
sure,
to know.
yeah, out or choice B. Okay.
So anyway, my only suggestion would be, it would say something
To
like,
add that.
to ensure that employees are blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
Past that, I mean, the rest is sort of 1950-ish, but
Sure.
especially on Q, it says,
What does it say?
on Q, developing and controlling
Yeah, I
employee incentive programs. It's
Yeah,
like,
I have-
whoa, that was
I have that.
1960s or 50s. or
Yeah, I
something.
had that too.
Okay. You could do what you want with that, but it's like, it seems like it's kind of old hat.
Yeah, that's what I got out of this.
It's old language.
It's old language.
But I was told we still need this.
Yeah,
Put
yeah.
this in a policy.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing. It's, it's like, it's missing the 2020 kind of wording that has changed, which as you get into 21st century and you're looking at all these general orders, you might have to sooner or later. I mean, this is just not something that creates any waves at all, but you might have to go. Can we submit this to the HR department to see whether there are any constructive wording changes that they think it might have? Because the city of Berkeley has a extremely robust HR department. What's her name? She's quite something. She is quite something. I mean, this HR office director for City of Berkeley knows what she's talking about.
So are we considering this one approved, or you guys want those changes made? Or those, I mean, they were suggestions.
That's right, yeah, suggestions. I only think, I mean, I see that 200.10.5 is police reserves, so the department, it's thinking of continuing the police reservist program.
Yeah, we have a whole reserve policy.
Yeah, okay, because I met probably the majority of the reserve officers, because they're always, you guys, or folks, the department uses them mostly on stuff that is just events, and they're really good people. I mean, they're really, really good people. And they probably, because they don't have the stresses of, of every day being on the field, right? So, they have a much different dynamic. They're more, not making a difference between regular online officers and police reserve officers. But I heard a rumor that there were some concerns about the reserve program going on the wayside. So I think it's a benefit for the department. So I'm happy about that. I think the recommendations, right?
Yeah, I have one other one though, and that is, I'm not sure where to put it, and it has to do with stop data. And
Well, it doesn't go here.
pardon?
I don't think it goes here.
Well,
Stop
wait a minute.
data?
Somebody's responsible for
Oh,
gathering
that's what
data, analyzing the data, comparing it to performance
We
standards.
have crime analysis, and we've got a whole policy about crime analysis. And I think,
Would that be in there?
I believe they talk about crime analysis in here. Let me see.
I didn't see anything on stop data. That was the whole point.
Well, I don't know. if
That
it
does put us into the
specifically
21st
says stop
century.
data.
So, it seems to me that something should be in there. It's about getting the data, analyzing data, making recommendations with respect to performance, and ensuring that there's follow-through or something like that.
Yeah, that was a question that I had to. Unless the chief is, because you guys are in the process. You guys is such a wrong language. The department is in the process of getting, they're being approved for a data analyst, right? And to have that within the department to evaluate data as it comes in.
200.9.1, the last one, J.
Which one? What?
200.9.1.
Develop crime analysis information to assist. Yeah.
200.9.1.
Page-
I don't know if I'd
page
call
4.
it crime analysis, because just because somebody stopped doesn't mean they committed a crime. So I don't know how it falls in your organization, but it really is to do with, I don't know what you call it generally, but I call it stop data, but it's, so I just didn't know where it fit in here is the reason I was raising it. But it does really, it's an important thing these days. So I would suggest you put something in there about it.
Yeah.
That's all, otherwise that's all I have.
So what do you want to do, Terry? You want to just hear back from them before?
I mean, however you think you would want to handle it. Some of these aren't earth-shaking, they're just
No.
wording changes,
Yeah, I mean,
right?
I can change some of the wording. Let's see.
So you're gonna do something on 200.8 about discipline or blah, 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 and
Yeah,
performance?
I'll put it to the captain to see if they want to change that.
Yeah, okay. So this one we're going to at least get some feedback on. And then you're gonna do something on, what was the other one? Training. You're gonna do some more kind of performance kind of language. You could put it to them too, but I mean, these are the ones that I'd be expecting some feedback on, and then you do something on the stop data
Sure.
info. And you can, it's up to you about controlling.
Yeah, I'll take it about.
Sam, just I think a typo on 200.8.
Yeah, the numbering.
The numbering,
is fine.
okay.
I have to cut and paste this all back into a different system that is a PDF, and when it saves under different numbers and in a different format, and sometimes markers disappear. So it's really, yeah.
Do you have a closed office when you're doing this?
No.
I just want to know what level of language comes
Oh
out when
my
that
God.
happens, you know? And whether you have a door you can lock and go
Pretty
beep.
amazing.
Do people tread lightly when
Yeah.
you say, "Oh, she's transferring
Yeah.
information to a PDF file"? That's
And
just
it's like, then I see it, but when I print it out, it's gone. So.
Yeah.
because it's
It's just it's a glitch.
because
in
of the analog.
system.
But it's the analog system.
Yeah,
It's the
it's
so
all-
you might have to click on that. I think it's you. Try to click on the analog system to see whether it just translates completely the way you want the formatting. If not, that's what's
Yeah,
happening.
They're moving to move everything to Word documents, but right now it's PDF format, and it's just this is a nightmare.
Yeah, if you do anything in a Google Doc and move it to a Word document and into a PDF, it comes out. You start in Cantonese, it comes out Mandarin.
And I have to keep
Well, I don't know.
track
That's
of
two
all
different.
those
That's
things.
languages that sound the same. That might be the same roots, but they're not the same. I mean, it's interesting. Okay, so we're fine with this, Terry.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Are we
make
approving it, or are we
With
submitting?
that
What are we
policy.
doing?
She's gonna come
I'll
back.
make those
That's fine.
changes.
Yeah.
So let's go to 301 then, which is
Okay.
You support the view board, which you guys were okay with, except you wanted the content about the dissenting
Yeah,
board members.
which is
and
305.5B1.
Yeah, so I added the section from the previous report, or the previous general order to this, which talks about the dissenting board members submitting a minority report, and what else was there?
I guess I did not print the version with your comments on it.
Yeah, but I remember that one.
So it's 301.5.
301.5, final report to the chief.
And you-
Because Terry wanted the 10 business days added, he wanted the time frame, and then the dissenting board members' content, so that all got added in there.
And the specificity on who writes a report, which you added the board chairperson to it.
And that was fine with me. And so I'm just trying to track between versions, because the one I read before, I'm not sure which version it was, had the red crossouts still in it. So you haven't changed that since last time, have you? The red crossouts were in the latest version before this, right?
Uh-huh.
That we looked at last time? Okay, because I
Yeah,
was
didn't
looking at
cross
an
those out
older,
just now.
yeah, okay,
She did the changes that we asked. I think we should just,
yeah,
we say thank you and
Yeah.
move on from 301.
yeah, appreciate you doing that.
Yeah. I see it. 10 business days, board chairperson, dissenting, which is, okay, 410, so I gotta go to the old packet now. One of my old,
409,
409.
409.
Oh yeah, sorry, did I jump?
409.
I did I?
Yeah.
409.
Yeah, we approved the other ones.
Somehow did we talk about this at all?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, because
We
I'm
started-
not,
started,
I'm
and then it was
hallucinating
time
over
to-
whether I just read it or we
Yeah,
talked
no,
about it,
we
you know?
talked about it a little bit, but had to end.
Yeah, we
Okay.
didn't have time to.
Oh, that's what it was, okay.
Let me find mine.
Let's see. This, I think we might have talked about this, but I'm gonna bring it up again, don't recall. 409.2. And we talked about a third line there, it says the department will collaborate where feasible, with mental health professionals, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then the question became, we had some discussion of this, I think, but it was like, well, what's feasible mean to an on-the-street officer? Does that mean they're required to collaborate with mental health folks that show up or not? And basically it says we're feasible. So you'd think they'd want to collaborate one way or the other. They may not decide to do what the mental health people want them to do.
Yeah, and so usually for mental health type calls, they will dispatch mental health,
Right.
mobile crisis
Right.
to there, or else the officer will ask for them to
So sometimes they don't show up.
Right, or sometimes they're busy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
it's-
understand.
sometimes they're not.
They leave at 11.
They're
so-
not around.
Okay, well, I mean, I think that's a good answer in a way, if it comes up at the commission for where feasible, because sometimes they don't show up. And,
Yeah, sometimes they're just busy or not.
how many times do you
on
think they
duty.
wouldn't show up, and out of 10 calls, how many wouldn't they show up?
I mean, it depends on how busy the city is.
Could it be up to 5 or 2 or 1?
No, I mean, it could be, they probably respond maybe 7 out of 10.
Okay.
But also depends on the nature of the need, right? If it's
Sometimes it's pretty, it's pretty clear that this person needs to go for services. Sometimes it's, so maybe the officer will choose, that they can handle it on their own. If they feel like they want, mental health, mobile crisis opinion, sometimes they'll just call them.
Is there, I'm looking at 409.4 now, comes, says the chief of police should designate a crisis surveillance team coordinator. Why wouldn't he or she?
Because of staffing. So we used to have a full-time crisis intervention team coordinator, but we don't anymore because of staffing.
And then again back to, let's see. On 409.5, the last line says the communications center shall advise if there are no available CIT officers to respond. And then is it clear somewhere in some policy what the officers that are at the incident would do? And that is
Well, then
basically they would just handle
have
it.
to handle it themselves,
Yeah.
yeah. And basically now, pretty much 99.9% of our department is trained in CIT, so
Okay,
everybody
maybe
is a
that's,
CIT officer.
I think we talked about that last time. Okay. And let's see. I thought the de-escalation 409.7 was good because it gave some specifics about
process.
how to handle things.
Sure.
To an individual officer, and I know they get training and all that kind of stuff, but at least this memorializes it and makes it a distinctive policy. Okay, my next.
Are you tying 409 to our concerns on? Well, I don't think we can.
On 49 what?
409.9 to our concerns with the spit hoods and masks in terms of CIT and supervisor response. Did you think about it in those terms? I don't know where you are now. Are you moving toward 409.9? I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I just
But
I didn't have anything about that,
It's
but
just saying, see the handcuffing and restraints policy.
Yeah, and that's why. Well, that wasn't a recommendation that was approved by the department, which is.
yeah, let's see, mine. A supervisor should respond. So I guess we talked about this. If there's if the supervisor isn't there yet and there's a crisis, they just handle it, basically, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
if a supervisor responded to every 5150 call we had,
He will be a
it would
51.
be
Yeah,
very
they'd be
difficult.
doing
He
that
will.
all
He
the
will.
time.
He will be a 5150.
Yeah, okay.
He or she would have to be evaluated under those conditions.
Well, I guess that's 409.13.
Mm-hmm.
Evaluation, is that on your?
Yeah.
So, mine was just on language. It says,
Where are you?
the top line there, the crisis intervention team coordinator should ensure, those are, to me, those are kind of, different. Ensures
Which page are
do
you
something.
sharing?
He's on page
But
6
anyway,
at the top.
Oh, I see.
409.13.
Under evaluation, okay, sorry.
Crisis intervention team should ensure that a thorough review of and analysis of the department response to these incidents is conducted annually. So to me, it would be more like, instead of messing around with shall, should, or whatever, should say the crisis intervention coordinator will conduct a
But
thorough.
what if we don't have a crisis intervention team coordinator?
Well, then they won't do it, right?
That's true.
But it says
Yeah.
shall.
Well, but my point is that that's another point. But the
Right, but we could say shall.
this is, if there's a crisis intervention team coordinator, then they
Mhm. I see what you're saying.
will conduct it.
mean,
Mine was
that-
more like will conduct a thorough review, blah 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 blah, annually, something like that. Now, that's interesting because what happens with now that you don't have one? So there's nobody really doing.
Right, well, there's still ways to analyze the data and analyze the reports.
Because it's
But
an
you don't
entry
get
to the
any-
system, right?
Huh?
It's an entry to the system. That's the kind of call.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's categorized as a mental health call. Sometimes it's not.
Yeah, this is because this is I think. Let me think how I say this before I say it. I think it's a positive for the department to have something like this. That's a report on this, because we hear so much about the fact that the police department it's answering so many calls that have to do with mental health vis-a-vis operational or public safety itself. Not saying that responding to mental health situations are not a public safety issue, but for people that believe that the department it should not have to respond so much, I'm a firm believer that we should expand what we're doing for mental health responses in the city instead of having the police officers be always the first response. That it would be positive for the department to go, listen,
Sure.
we talk about this, but here are the data, here's the facts. We are spending so much time on this that is precluding us from doing the other work that is so important in terms of public safety for the city. And whatever that is, we're away from our beats.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
so-
but that report.
You need to be able to do it.
I can't even imagine how much time it would take to compile and
Yeah.
how you would go about, because calls that come in as, a
Loud noise.
traffic hazard end up being,
Somebody in the street, yeah.
somebody who ends
Walking
up
in the middle of the street.
So I don't know how that's something for crime analysis, and I mean I agree that it should be compiled.
I mean, even for internal purposes, so so you can have that perspective. A crisis intervention response by a CIT officer or any officer could certainly turn into a use of force incident, or worse yet, an incident in which a police officer endangers him or herself because of the nature of the call and the nature of the possible person who has a mental health crisis. So to me, we ask police officers to do so many things in the city, and then we're having them be the response to someone who is in such level of trauma and duress that they're a danger to other people and themselves, and that includes a police officer. So to me, I look at it from that perspective of, the numbers should be important for you folks to say, even to city council. and to the community, listen, folks, this is what we're dealing with on a regular basis. This is not even lip service. These are the numbers, y'all. And it's impacting our own wellness as police officers, which is really what I like to have a conversation about sooner or later is, how is this impacting your own mental health wellness of police officers responding to these incidents all the time on top of the incidents that you have to respond, which could end up in the threat to the community or to yourselves. I mean, I think the discussions on all these general orders lose the perspective of having a conversation on how every single thing that you folks do actually impacts you folks as well. And that's never part of the conversation. I mean, and we're asking these folks to do all this stuff, and we don't take into account how it taxes them.
Yeah,
and no one wants to talk about that. Everybody wants to talk about what you need to do when you respond, not in consideration, the fact that you're responding to things like this, regardless of whether it's your freaking job or not. That's shouldn't be part of the dynamic. I have a question on this, Terry, if you're done.
Yeah.
The only thing that I saw here that I had two questions. On the CIT personnel responsibilities, it's very small. It's not as elaborate as I think would think it would be. I mean, on 409.10, CIT personnel responsibilities. Determining if the call of service warrants a CIT response, 5150 evaluations, in an emergency, a psychiatric detention is warranted. The CIT officer shall prepare the required documentation on making them. It's very, very small. I think CIT officers do more than that, but I would imagine it would be more with everything that we talk about CIT and CIT training and the escalation that it would be much bigger there.
The evaluation encompasses a lot of different things, but basically we were trying to say that if a CIT person is on scene, that they're the ones who are going to determine whether or not this person goes for a 5150 evaluation. And if they decide that they're going for a 5150 evaluation, it's the CIT officer who's writing it. So that's what we wanted to make it clear to other officers, that if you call a CIT officer to the scene, that they're going to do the work.
The only thing that I'm going to channel Terry. I have two shoals that I have a concern about. The first shoal is on 409.11, incident reporting, and I think this one's important. Members engaging in communication associated with
409.11.
0.11.
Okay.
Members engaging in any oral or written communication associated with a mental health crisis should be mindful, I'm okay with that one, of the sensitive nature of such communications and shall exercise appropriate discretion when referring to or describing persons and circumstances. That goes to the whole thing about he was a crazy loony. I mean, I think that I don't know why that's not a shall. I mean, in terms of, because I think that doesn't go to the mindfulness of it, but it goes to the language which is used to describe somebody's mental health, and whether that should not be a shall instead of a should.
You're talking about the second paragraph, right?
I mean, that's more about
First one.
standards of conduct and trying,
It's on the first paragraph, second sheet.
yeah. This is more of a guideline and procedure. What you're talking about is the way the officer should act, which is they should exercise appropriate discretion when referring to persons and circumstances. But, the truth is that they don't always do that, because we're human beings and we deal with this all the time, and it's, we have different ways of communicating and different ways of blowing off steam, and I think I hear what you're saying. This is a should. I don't want to make it a shall and have it become it would still be a discourtesy.
And that's what I'm going. That's
so
right.
I think it's fine as a should, because you could still jam them up on being discourteous if it is said, in front of the general public, or to that person. Obviously, you don't want that.
It's so you're saying that this is just that doesn't, because the first one is, because I think it also directs the police officers to be mindful of how they write a report. You know, because if somebody gets public information request, and in the report, the police officer, or even an investigation that we do for an allegation of discourtesy, right? And in that investigation, the police officer, for some reason or the other, where to refer to that person as whatever, whether that will not be detrimental to the police officer is evaluating an allegation of discourtesy. So that's what I mean.
So you wanna make that should exercise appropriate as shall, and I assume you wanna make the, should keep related information confidential as shall? Was that your next one?
No, but that, I don't know if it was, but that was on my list, I missed it.
Yeah.
That should be a shall.
Yeah.
Shall be a shall.
Yeah.
Because
I can change those.
Because information confidential, the moment that you do a 5150, or if it's attached to a 5150, and that becomes part of a medical report, because it could be part of a medical report, then I mean, those are confidential. I mean, particularly if you're.
Yeah, I mean, but this is, I mean, you're basically saying be professional.
Yeah,
And
I mean.
so it's like, we're gonna be professional, so I don't wanna get too much more into telling us to write the correct reports and use the correct verbiage when talking about people with mental health issues, because I think that we are the most well-trained department when it comes to dealing with people with mental health disorders. So I will make that should a shall, and the other should a shall,
And I have one last one.
one more shall.
409.12. Members shall treat all individuals equally and with dignity and respect. That should